Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome to the Rockwood Board of Education meeting. Before we begin, we would like to extend our condolences to the family, friends, coworkers, students, and everyone who knew and loved Susan Concannon, a bus driver who passed away a few weeks ago. Our thoughts and prayers are certainly with you all. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the district, hear reports about our progress, and listen to the community on important issues. We want to remind all of our visitors that we expect the audience to remain civil and respectful at all times as the board conducts its business. We appreciate your cooperation and that you took the time to attend tonight's meeting. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes. Next, could I have a motion to approve Board of Education work session meeting minutes for December 5th, 2023?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That also passes. And could I have a motion to approve Board of Education meeting minutes for December 7th, 2023?
So moved.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That passes. I do not believe we have any patron comments this evening, so Dr. Kane, I will turn it over to you for superintendent and board comments.
Thank you, President Bays. I would like to take a moment to extend my condolences to the family, friends, and everyone who knew and loved Dr. Gaydon Caruth. Dr. Caruth devoted her entire life to public education as a teacher, administrator, and as a mentor. She was a superintendent in Minnesota, Virginia, and in Missouri, and that's where I had the opportunity to work with her in my time in the Park Hill School District. She was truly a wonderful mentor, an even better friend, and she is someone that will be greatly missed, and I want to publicly send our love and sympathy to everyone who is grieving her loss. Earlier tonight, the Board of Education approved the hiring of Dr. Joshua Flores as the new assistant principal at Rockwood Summit High School. He will begin on July 1st. He is replacing Sarah Goodman, who was hired last month as the new associate principal at Eureka High School. Currently, Josh is an assistant principal at Kirkwood High School, a position he has held since 2021. Prior to that, he was an assistant principal at Maplewood Richmond Heights Middle School for 2 years. Josh taught social studies at both Eureka and Rockwood Summit between 2014 and 2019 and coached baseball and football at Eureka. He earned a Bachelor's of Science in Education from the University of Missouri-Columbia and a Master's in Education and Administration, an Education Specialist and in Administration, and a Doctorate in Education, all from the University of Missouri-St. Louis. Please join me in welcoming Josh back to the Rockwood School District and congratulating him on his new administrative role. The Association of School Business Officials International recently recognized the Rockwood School District with the 2023-2024 Meritorious Budget Award for Excellence in Budget Presentation. This is the 24th straight year that the ASBO has awarded an MBA, the Meritorious Budget Award, to the Rockwood School District. The Rockwood Finance Department regularly earns top honors for its excellence in financial management. This includes a AAA rating from Standard & Poor's, a recognition that is earned by only 4 school districts in the state of Missouri, and 18 straight years of earning ASBO and Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. Rockwood is the only school district in the state to currently hold a AAA rating, as well as ASBO's MBA and COE and GFOA's COE. Thankfully, I don't have to state that again. But thank you to our entire finance department for your commitment and continued strong fiscal stewardship in the Rockwood School District. Truly believe they earn a round of applause for that. This year's Rockwood School District e-card features the work of Rockwood Summit High School senior Margaret Schneiders. And that's going to be displayed soon. The card itself will be displayed soon. More than 120 artists around the school district submitted entries into this year's contest, and I had the honor of choosing the award-winning design. Margaret's photography piece features 3 deer resting in a snowbank with brightly colored lights in the background, and the message states this: "From our family to yours, happy holidays." Congratulations, Margaret, and thank you to all of our students who participated in this year's Rockwood Holiday Card Contest. Let's give Margaret a round of applause. So, 2021's beginning to, 2023 is beginning to wind down for us as a school district and as a community. And I would like to take a moment to wish our entire community a very happy holiday season. Thank you for helping make the start of the school year so outstanding. And I can't wait to see what 2024 has in store for us. As one final gift tonight, I would like to share a video of me trying, emphasis on trying, with varying levels of success to measure up to some of our Eureka High School Family and Consumer Science students in the cookie decorating department. Let's take a look. Thank you. You know, maybe I can take maybe the blazer comes off. Okay, let me wash my hands first. This looks more complex than I anticipated. Okay. Room is not our challenge. I want to look at an example back here one more time. We may have to switch cookies after we're done. I'm just saying.
We have a little competition going on for the best decorated cookie, and we were trying to figure out what the prize would be. Nash had a really good idea.
Oh, the snow day. Yeah, we did a snow day. Our personal class.
I can feel the weight of a district on your answer. I tell you what I could do is the winner, I can call them the morning of the snow day. But that's at like 4:15 in the morning.
No, I got you. I'll do it.
You gotta answer your phone.
You have to answer your phone?
Yeah, I got an answering machine.
Do they know how I feel about snowflakes in the room? So this is like a Friday night, Saturday morning snowflake. Those are the kinds. No one's getting that joke. All right, so how does this work?
I just spread that color on first and then
So how do you get going though? May I use this blue?
yeah.
Did you show Dr. King your first one?
That's the first.
Ask him if he buy that. Did you buy that?
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, on Christmas Eve, I normally go to my grandma's house in St. Peter's.
Okay.
On Christmas morning, I'll go to my cousin's house in Paris. So.
Okay. Hopefully I'm staying around town, but we'll see what happens. How about you? What are you gonna do?
I go to my grandparents' house
Where's that?
in Oakville.
Okay. This is calming.
I think it is.
So you think the snowflake will increase the likelihood we're gonna have a snow day?
I hope.
What if we don't have a snow day? It'll be on the cookies then. It's on the cookies if we don't have a snow day. I think we verified that fact. And when snowflakes are that large, yeah, there's a good chance. Let it snow. Did someone bribe you to say that?
Because everything always say, let it snow. So,
I don't know if superintendents do though.
I mean, you could
We could.
just say, let it snow.
Just let it snow.
See, you said it.
I did say that. I sure hope the Packers play better than this cookie looks tonight.
Yeah.
I don't want to mix these up. That would be tragic. That would be tragic to. This is your cookie, right?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No, we're gonna stand in integrity. That's your cookie. Yours looks like a professional did it. Mine looks like a first timer. engaged in.
It's my first time also.
That's your first time, so this book needs a rewrite. That's impressive, though. That's impressive. I appreciate it. Absolutely.
We've had a fantastic start to the school year here in the Rockwood School District. Really exciting things are happening each and every single day in our classroom spaces. We continue to wrap around the needs of students, and we're most importantly here for each other. Speaking of each other, this is a perfect time of the year for everyone to just take a bit of time to stop, relax, and enjoy the season. It's one of my favorite seasons, and I hope that is true for each one of you as well. So happy holidays to everyone. Hope that everyone has a very safe and happy new year, and we will see you in 2024.
Happy holidays!
It was not bad. It tasted better than it happened to look. There's no doubt about that. Yes.
I'm just thankful that Lynn brought her cookies instead of your cookies to eat before the board meeting.
It's not a talent of mine. I think we have video-based evidence. So, to everyone, have a very happy holiday season, and again, enjoy the time with each other. That's all, President Bates. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. I wondered if we all had one of your cookies underneath our chairs or something tonight as like a final gift. All right. Any board comments this evening?
I do. I want to give a shout out to the first grade teachers at Kellison. They invited me to come read to their classes this week, and it is such a pleasure to be in a classroom with those kiddos, and they're just ask so many wonderful questions. They're so grateful that you're there, and it's good to be in the classrooms and see what all the good learning that's happening. It really does speak to what's going on in our district. So thank you, first grade at Kellison.
Awesome. Any other board comments? All right, moving on. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Abstain from 7.02.
Will also abstain from 7.02.
Okay. Any other discussion? Tammy, do you want to read the public gifts? Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, I do. We do have one gift, public gift that we'd like to acknowledge this evening. We have a $5,000 anonymous gift at Marquette High School, and it's a donation to their school's Holiday Dream program that provides support for the students and families in their school. So thank you for doing that for us.
Thank you, Tammy, for reading that. Okay, so the motion is to approve the consent agenda items as submitted. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? We have the 2 abstentions, and that passes. Thank you. Next item, could I please have a motion to accept the 2022-23 audit report, post-audit report, and secretary of the board report as presented?
Moved.
Motion and a second. Looks like we have Dan Steinberg coming to the table with Brian Wirtz. So welcome and thank you for presenting to us.
Hi, good evening. Just a quick introduction. This is Brian Wirtz with partner with Kerber Breckel, who audit team served this past year for our audit that we're presenting tonight. So field work from their team was in October, and we've prepared the report as we have in the past. And Brian's here to just provide a recap of the audit and answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Dan. First of all, I'd like to just thank you for allowing me to be first. It's not very often I get to go first. I'm usually on the back end of a district meeting, but I really appreciate you putting me on first. So I'm going to see if this thing goes left or right. There we go. So my presentation tonight is basically required communications that we, as a part of our audit, we can either put these in a letter form to the district, or this board presentation satisfies those requirements. So the first thing we like to talk about is what each other's responsibility is when it comes to an audit. And it's, I don't know if you actually read the audit opinion, but it really is good about discussing what each other's responsibilities are. It's the management's responsibility to prepare the financial statements in accordance with GAAP. It's also management's responsibility to maintain internal controls to safeguard the district's assets and to make sure that there's no material misstatements in the financial statements that might go undetected. And to select the basis of accounting, which we talked a little bit about. There's various financial statements in here with various basis of accounting. The government-wide financial statements, which are basically the financial statements of the district as if they were a for-profit entity, are recorded on the accrual basis of accounting. So the fixed assets and the debt are on the balance sheet, so to speak. And the fund financial statements are on the modified accrual basis of accounting, which excludes fixed assets and debt. And then there's a reconciliation between the two. The other thing that management has to do is determine that the district is a going concern, which means that basically it's going to be in business 12 months after our audit opinion date. Then it's our responsibility to basically give reasonable but not absolute assurance that based on our procedures, the financial statements are free of a material misstatement. Reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance, but it's not absolute because we don't review 100% tests of the transactions, but we are required to test enough transactions based on the standards to bring that to the misstatement to a low level. Now, if there's a risk if there's a misstatement due to fraud, that risk is higher that it would go undetected because there could be collusion, misrepresentations, those sorts of things. So that makes it a higher level for us to catch. While we're doing the audit, we're required to exercise professional judgment and skepticism. We are required to identify the risk where we think a material misstatement in the financial statements could exist and develop procedures for those risks that we feel that could happen. In the course of the audit and in the planning, we gain an understanding of the internal controls of the district, and we may even test internal controls as they relate to the federal programs, but we do not give an opinion on the internal controls. That's outside the scope of an audit. We are also required to determine that the appropriateness of the accounting standard or the accounting policies used to prepare the financial statements are reasonable. And lastly, we as well are required to determine that the district is a going concern. So both parties are required to do that. We do perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, governmental auditing standards, and uniform guidance, which is the audit part of the audit that is related to federal programs. The report that we issued this year is an unmodified opinion, which basically states that based on the audit procedures that we performed, we feel that the financial statements are not materially misstated in accordance with GAAP. There are three types of weaknesses in internal controls. During the course of our audit, if we became aware of these three types of internal controls, we may or may not have to communicate those to you. So there's a control deficiency, which is a minor weakness in internal controls that we might just discuss orally. That might be that you're required to, whoever's approving a purchase order, to put their initials on it. And we might test 30 purchase orders and see 3 don't have that signature or that approval. So we might say that's just a control deficiency. Let management aware of it. That doesn't need to be in writing. The next level is a significant deficiency, which is a little higher level weakness. And the last one is a significant deficiency that is considered a material weakness. And that means that the weakness is considered so significant that it's more than likely that a material misstatement in the financial statements would go undetected. So we're happy to report that there were no weaknesses in the internal control that needed to be reported to management. Then as we audit the federal programs, each federal program that we audit has a compliance supplement that tells us which compliance areas we're required to audit. And again, if we noted any significant deficiencies in the compliance, we'd have to make you aware of those in writing. So we had no instances of non-compliance this year as well. When we audit the federal programs, the major programs, we're required to audit a percentage of the internal or the programs. Each major program has to be audited once every 3 years. And so this year, to get our coverage, we tested the ESSER program, the Child Nutrition Cluster. The type of audit opinion we gave on those programs is unmodified as well. And we had no material weaknesses noted in those major programs. If there were any findings as it related to the uniform guidance, we'd be required to disclose to you those as well, which we had none. We're also required to do some testing as it relates to Missouri laws and regulations. As it relates to the budgetary and disbursement procedures, accurate disclosures of attendance and transportation records. That part of our examination is done in accordance with attestation standards established by the AICPA, and we gave an unmodified opinion on those procedures as well. These are the other standards that we're required to communicate to management. The significant accounting policies are described in Note A to the financial statements. As we discussed, the accrual basis of accounting is used for the government-wide and modified accrual for the fund. There were no new accounting policies adopted, and existing policies were not changed during the year. There are significant estimates in these financial statements, and we're required to make you aware of those. The most significant estimates in these financial statements is the pension liability, which is the district's proportionate share of their underfunding of the PRS or the PSRS and the PEERS programs. Those are significant estimates for a couple reasons. One, they're actuarially determined, but it's also based on every district in the state of Missouri putting in census data to determine how much they're supposed to get of the proportionate liability. So it's a significant estimate. No transactions lacked authoritative guidance or consensus. The financial statement disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear. We say that, but if you look at the pension, there's two footnotes. One for the retirement plan, which is basically starts on page 42 and goes to page 50, so it's an 8-page footnote related to all the information that relates to that. And then the OPEB liability, which is note I, and that's another 3 pages of a footnote. So those are significant estimates and significant disclosures in the financial statements. We encountered no difficulties in performing the audit. We had no disagreements with management. We did talk a little bit about the risk. Every audit is different in that we're required to assess risk where we think a material misstatement might occur. Every audit starts out with, it has 2 risks. One is management override of controls, and the other one is improper revenue recognition. For the district, the improper revenue recognition is one of the few that we can get around because so much of the receipts, the cash receipts or revenue can be confirmed with tax revenues, federal and state programs, those types of things. So the improper revenue recognition is not really a big deal for us. Management override of controls is always a significant area in every audit that we do, and we're required to, like I said, determine where we think there could be a material misstatement in the financial statements and develop procedures to address those risks. There were no financial statement misstatements detected as a result of our audit, which basically means during our audit that we have to make an audit adjustment for the financial statements to be in accordance with GAAP. We did not have any of those. We did obtain our management representation letter that was approved, which basically the audit was approved and ready to be dispersed on December the 8th. The reason that that's an important date is any subsequent events or contingent liabilities that occur as of June 30th, we have to look at those items through December 8th and determine if there's a disclosure, an updated disclosure, or even an adjustment to be made to the financial statements. Anything that happens related to that after December the 8th, we are not required to review. The financial statements are complete and accurate. All material information has been disclosed to the auditors, which is part of the management representation letter. And if management had any consultations with any other independent accountants, we'd be required to disclose that to you. Those instances would be usually if we said you need to record your proportionate share of the pension liability, and they're like, I don't think we do, so we're going to ask another accountant about it. We'd have to make you aware that happened. So we didn't have any of that as well. We'd like to express, honestly, we mentioned a couple folks in here, but everybody, does a really good job of getting this information together. There's a lot of information in this booklet. There are 2 certificates of excellence in financial reporting, which the district has gotten ever since I've been associated with the district, which is phenomenal. Because these people, when they review these things, they don't take things lightly. They get a little nitpicky sometimes. You could have something in there the same 10 years in a row, and all of a sudden the 11th year someone else looks at it and has a problem with it. So congratulations to the district on that as well. So this is the team that did all the work. All the women did the work, and then I presented. Thank you to everybody, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions by the board? Great job to you and your team, and thank you for the amount of time you spend. It's like a 2-week process usually.
That's a few days at interim, maybe 3 to 4 days at interim, and then a solid full 2 weeks at final for sure. The report itself takes some time. I mean, there's a lot of information in there, so
Sure.
the field work itself is about 2 weeks.
Wow. Well, it's a lot of information. We appreciate the work you do and obviously the work that our financial department does. So thank you all for your collaboration on that. So the motion is to accept the 2022-23 audit report, post-audit report, and secretary of the board report as presented.
Move.
Sorry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That passes. Sorry. All right. Thank you, Brian. All right. Next, we have a information-only presentation. Glenn Hancock is coming up to the table with some information to share with us about APR. And Dr. Kane, I believe, is weighing in as well.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
While they are settling in, I think it's really, really important that our community understand that we are not required in any way, shape, or form to give any update as relates to APR. But for the sake of transparency and just for the sake of some general understanding of some really salient points, we think it's important that we, in fact, do so. I will stand by something I have said for some time, is that we will always, always, always be in a space where we're looking to improve upon what we are doing. But I just want to be clear, just both personally and professionally, in no way, shape, or form do I believe that the Rockwood School District is an 85 as it relates to a school district. I just don't believe it. I've been in too many classroom spaces. I've spent, I can't tell you how many hours reviewing data. I can't tell you the number of BSIP meetings and conversations that are occurring in this school district. There's no way, shape, or form in which I believe that. And so I am not going to go on the attack as relates to any processes. We know we have work to do, but I say we absolutely should be very proud of what's happening in the Rockwood School District. We had a Milken Award winner in this district, and I wasn't at the program. You know why I wasn't at the program? I wasn't at the program because I was in Washington, D.C., because we had a National Blue Ribbon School that was named. Think about that. Think about the statistical probability of a school district actually having a Milken Award winner and being one of 353 buildings across the nation that actually received National Blue Ribbon. There is much to be proud of in this school district. So we want to actually just give you some factual updates as relates to performance, what we are looking at, our work and focus on instructional fidelity. And this will be a movie spoiler alert. You're going to hear instructional fidelity next year as well, because we have efforts to do work to engage in this area. But there is a tremendous amount of positivity that is happening in the school district. There is no other public or private high school across the state that can boast the number of National Merit semifinalists compared to one of the high schools in this school district. No one else in the state can say that. And so there's a lot to be proud of. We know we have work to do, but there's a tremendous amount that happens every single day by staff, clearly by our students, but in support of our parents as well, that's happening every single day in the Rockwood School District. And I never want us to lose sight of that. So with that, I'll stop talking for like 5, maybe 10 minutes. But Glenn and Shelley, thank you so much for being here.
Definitely, thank you. And yes, tonight we're going to share an update with our annual performance report. I'll shorten it to APR probably a lot tonight for the presentation. And we'll share a little bit of what the APR is sharing, as well as underlying data within it. As Dr. Kane mentioned, there are a lot of successes that we're going to share tonight. There are opportunities for growth and improvement. You know, we've had a system of looking at our balanced assessment plan and looking at our data. And so we'll share several examples of things that we have put in place from looking at this information prior to when we received this. A lot of this information that's based in this APR, annual performance report, is all from our MAP test that we took back in April and May. And we're kind of getting these reports in December. Last year, we received our report in March. And so that's why it's really important that we have an internal system with our assessment plan to monitor and make adjustments and pivots as we get the data back. And so with that, kind of shifting gears to just sharing our balanced assessment plan, that we do take into account those state level assessments, such as the grade level assessment of the MAP data, our end of course assessments, that we do that on a yearly basis as provided by the state. But knowing that we get that data back only one time a year, and usually it's after students leave school and really after we even began the new school year, we have a layer of interim assessments that we do, such as STAR. We look at FastBridge. We offer college and career readiness opportunities to monitor that assessment data in the meantime as well. And so we'll look at that multiple times throughout the year to make plans and adjustments for supports for students, for enrichments along the way. And then we always continue with any implementation of our instruction materials or instruction. We always work with our professional learning communities, which are teacher teams, as well as our classroom teachers, to continue improving classroom assessment, because that's really where students get an opportunity to see where they are in relation to the material they're learning, and teachers and students have opportunities to make adjustments there on a daily basis. With the APR, it's made up of mainly MAP data. We'll share a few other data points that are involved with contributing to our APR score. Our MAP data, and we've shared this information before, that the MAP data from going back to even 2011 with data that's been shared before, there's been several changes in standards or changes within the assessment itself over those past few years. And there's little indicators along the way of sharing where there's been changes either to the standard or to the actual test itself. For math, between the 21-22 school year, really for the 21 and 22 school year, we gave an opportunity for more students to take the Algebra 1 than what was required, because those students didn't have an opportunity to take the Algebra 1 test during 2020. You can see the blank gap in there, the railroad track that looks like it's kind of broken in between there. There was no testing that year, so students didn't have an opportunity to take the Algebra 1 test. For some years, DESE had waived that requirement, so our Department of Elementary Secondary Education had waived the requirement for an Algebra 1 EOC, but with the class of 2022, that was going to be a needed, with the class of 2023, that was going to be a needed component to have an Algebra 1 score in order to be qualified for that A+ scholarship. So we made sure we had additional students have that opportunity to have that Algebra 1 score. Just a little update, since so much of the data is made up of MAP scores, I did want to share our MAP scores, and we will be providing another update at our annual community report that we do in February. We'll be going through these scores and even more in February. This just gives a quick glimpse of achievement by grade level. So here you have the grade levels that are offered for each grade level with the MAP test, but then also end of course assessments. Once you hit high school, there's no longer a set grade where assessments are given. It's by the course you take. So the A1 represents Algebra 1, A2 represents Algebra 2, GE represents geometry. And the colors in the chart, the green indicate Missouri for 22 and 2023, and the blue represent Rockwood for the same year span, 2022 and 2023. And so this is representing or showing math data, and you can see over the years in between 22 and 23 that there definitely increases really in each grade level for math, that we're seeing increase from 22 to 23 in terms of percent of students proficient or advanced. There's 4 achievement levels on the MAP test: below basic, basic, proficient, and advanced, and these are looking at the top 2 levels. When you look at 8th grade, that's the area that is showing scoring below the state in terms of proficient and advanced. We have roughly about 44% of our 8th graders in this group took Algebra 1. So technically those 8th grade scores are included in the Algebra 1 component during that year. And for Algebra 1, the difference between those 2 years, again, last year we had an additional number of students take the Algebra 1 EOC, and that was so we could provide them the opportunity to take or qualify for the A+ scholarship going into college. In Algebra 2, last year we had fewer students take the Algebra 2 because they were able to engage in the Algebra 1 since that was not available during COVID, during 2020. And so this year, you can see the number has risen, but that is because we have a larger number participating with the Algebra 2 EOC during that year.
So I think it's important to point out again that we don't get MAP results until typically the fall when kids have already started school and they've taken it the spring before. So we really do rely on those assessments that Glenn talked about that we take 3 times a year to guide us in what action steps we need to take as we are working through our improvement plans. And so before the school year started, these were the things that we had put in place for MAP performance, because the STAR assessments that we take are closely aligned to the standards from the state and MAP. So again, Dr. Kane mentioned our focus on instructional fidelity, really understanding what mastery looks like and having those proficiency scales spelled out so it's clear and consistent across the board. Building assessments that measure that mastery. So we've had a lot of teacher teams working on looking at the assessments that they're giving and ensuring that all the standards that they should be assessing are being assessed and that they're being assessed at the right level and equally assessed. Tracking individual student progress in those standards. We've put in place 2 specific tools, Formative and Mastery Connect, to let teachers actually enter their assessments and align them to standards and see how specific students performed on those specific standards. Using a math intervention software consistently, that's Dreambox, and we have found that that's really helping us assess student learning and determining lessons based on student needs. We're seeing a lot of growth based on the use of that adaptive software, and it's providing both interventions and extensions, so that's a really big plus for our teachers in order to meet kids' needs. Reviewing data on a regular basis that determines the standards that we need in additional instruction and intervention supports. So Glenn and his team run regular data dives with the curriculum team, with principals, with teachers, so that they can start looking at, oh, these are the standards that we need to ramp up a little bit. And then collaborating with special school district to ensure that kids receive experience and coordinating those math curricula. So when students receive services from special school district, we're really working on whether they're hearing the same vocabulary in both places, maybe experiencing the same resources. So there's continuity between those things and kids aren't further confused by the differences between those 2.
And just, excuse me, going back to the math and looking at 8th grade again, I had a note here to share also that if you combine the 8th graders that were taking 8th grade math and those students taking Algebra 1 in terms of what percent of 8th graders are proficient or advanced in math, it's 55% of students are proficient or advanced in math there. And when you look at the 8th grade section here, and when we're showing 29% of our students proficient advanced, that is definitely an opportunity for growth here for us, right? That's definitely an area that that we look at as we're trying to, whether it's the new math curriculum we're starting to put in place that Shelley has talked about, Dreambox, that we are starting to make growth or gains in this grade level in this course, and we'll continue to do so along the way there. Looking the other component that's largely involved in our APR score are our results related with English language arts. And this chart here, the same way in terms of grade level assessments, so grades 3 through 8, we give English language arts. And then for the EOC, the end of course, that is in 10th grade. Typically that's our English 2 course in 10th grade that gets that EOC. Same display here, we have green, which indicates the scores from Missouri, and blue indicates the scores from Rockwood. From year to year, from 22 to 23, in several grade levels, you see a slight decrease or staying the same. A little bit different pattern than what we saw from math. That is an area, as we mentioned, we've been looking at our internal assessment data, also looking at our math data over time, and that's something that we've been working with, and Shelley will share here in a moment with some of the things we've done with ELA. But one of those is looking at a new ELA program, especially when you look at our younger grades here that are assessed on MAP in grades 3 and 4. Those students, that was kindergarten, end of kindergarten, beginning of first grade, first and second grade, that time span there where there's a lot of fundamental reading, phonics instruction, even just being able to see and visualize people pronouncing words and hearing them being pronounced and developing the vocabulary during those years. So she'll talk a few more examples of that. But overall, you see a couple areas of improvement from one year to the next. And that in some areas it mirrors the same as what we see in the state. In other areas we see a difference in the state as well. So we not only look at our data, but we also look at data around the state in terms of how are they doing on particular standards and outcomes in other districts, so we can learn from them. Many of our district curriculum leaders are also involved in professional learning networks where they meet with coordinators of curriculum of other school districts to also learn and share information of practices that we're doing.
All right, so here are the action steps that we put in place with ELA. So, of course, we've implemented a new K-5 ELA curriculum, and it really focuses on the science of reading. That writing team did a lot of research, looked at a lot of our data, brought in experts, and honed in on, especially in K2, that phonemic awareness and phonics approach. And then a lot of word work and spelling-related work that also involves phonics at 3, 4, and 5. And of course, we're not letting the comprehension go at the same time. That's really important. You can't stop that. And then our early STAR reports are promising. So we just finished testing. We've got some buildings that are probably still finishing up. And so far, it's looking decent. And we're hearing a lot of qualitative things from our teachers. We've heard a lot of, it was really hard to implement at the beginning, but now we're seeing gains in our kids. We're seeing the growth that they're having. So we've been really pleased with some of the things that they've been sharing along the way, and they've been troopers and learning all of this new stuff. And then,
I'm going to interject here just for 1 minute, because I saw these first graders reading words like there, they, what. These are not easy words for first graders, and they were reading them today off the wall for me, and they were amazing. So whatever you're doing, it's working.
And then focusing on instructional fidelity. So again, clarifying those learning targets. What does it mean to have mastery? Looking at those proficiency scales, using them along the way, and building those assessments that measure mastery, track student progress, and really knowing when you look at those assessments how to reteach and what students need extension on at the same time. So that's a clear focus that we're making across the board that we could shore up.
And that's just, several examples of the wonderful things that are happening. Our students, our teachers, our families are, there's reports that we're sharing in terms of our reading success plans with our parents as part of our Senate Bill 681. So it's really great to see some of the wonderful things that are continuing to go on. Moving to science and sharing, again, same graph in terms of the color scheme that's used here. Grades 5 and 8 are the grades that are assessed with science. Biology is the high school EOC. For us, many of our students will take biology during their freshman year. I'll share this again at another point here in the slides. Biology and social studies I'm going to touch on next, that districts have a choice on when they give those end of course assessments, that they're not tied to a grade level, like grade level 5 and grade level 8 are for the grade level assessments in there. Districts have opportunities to give it at different times, and I'll touch again on that point, why it's important when we move into a few other points here. When you look at our overall science scores, you see that there's some gains in particular grade level spans, a larger gain in biology this past year. One of the things that I know that occurred, really a dedicated focus on the learning outcomes, course outcomes and standards that went with our biology EOC. So it was great to share the improvement from last year to this year with the teachers that have been really looking closely and doing some of those practice items along there to ensure that they have the outcomes in their curriculum covered. And with social studies, this one, we don't have a preceding test for social studies. There's only one assessment that's government. Again, districts have a choice of what grade particularly they take that assessment. For us, it's normally juniors is when that government course comes into play. And you can see there's a slight increase from last year to this year with government. So when we start to put all that together, DESE developed MSIP 6 to follow MSIP 5, and the big goal of that was to ensure continuous improvement for schools. And the way they kind of put all that together is an annual performance report and APR. And the APR is built and based off of, uses map data for a good chunk of its overall points in terms of there. And the point distribution for MSIP 6 scoring in our annual performance report is broken into two categories. Performance, that's the top half. It's worth an overall 70% of the overall score. Continuous improvement is worth 30% of the overall score. The big difference between performance and continuous improvement, performance are the outcomes, those measures you're going to look at. Continuous improvement is more about the processes and inputs. Do you have the processes and inputs to help for a successful school district? In terms of the scoring, relatively the scoring is very similar to last year in terms of the percent of overall points that are earned. You'll notice there at the top that achievement status counts as 24%. So that is how are we doing, like we just talked about in the map results, percent proficient, advanced, basic, and below basic. All those are taken into account. Achievement growth, traditionally they've looked at one assessment to the next and our students scoring at or above a predicted score on the prior assessment. Both of those areas of achievement, we receive 16% of our points when you look at all students, and 8% of the overall for that each individual particular category for SG, which is just shortened for student group. DESE has identified students who are Black, Hispanic, participate in the free reduced lunch program, in the English language learner program, or have an IEP, and they are in our student group, and they are looked at separately for both academic achievement status and achievement growth. The slight difference though this year with the scoring is there's an increase in the achievement growth. This year they added two categories in there. They added biology EOC and the government EOC as part of growth, which wasn't in there in the last year's calculations. They also though added algebra and the English too, which again those EOCs were not part of the growth calculation or growth formula last year. So those EOCs are all new. And if you remember from the prior slides when I kind of touched upon that, in government there's not a preceding assessment. So currently right now what's been shared they're using to predict that our prior ELA and or math scores for government and biology in there. And that's pretty much the big difference right now between the 2 years in terms of the calculations in here overall. The next few slides will begin to break down just those calculations where total points and everything have been earned at inside of here. So just showing real quickly, just illustrating from 22, 23, 24, the state had a way to phase in the amount of points that were earned. You'll notice there that the total points earned down there at the bottom, points possible, are different each year. So this year, again, there was an additional 12 points, 12 points added in there for a subtotal of total of 192 available. Next year, there's another 8 points available. That's for a category called response to standards. We actually did that last year as part of being in that pilot program. If you remember, we were in the pilot year last year, so we did that. While we did that and we received our scores, we will not receive the credit, if you will, on the scorecard until 2024 when that APR comes out next year. It's also, this is a good time to also just share that of the 192 points available for Rockwood, that's different by district also. Depending on your district size, if you're a K-12, a K-2, a K-8, or if you don't have enough students to qualify for a student group, then those points aren't factored into your denominator whenever you're looking at them. When you start to look at the breakdown of percent of points earned by districts for this APR, when you look at the beginning at the far my right, I think it's your right when you're looking over my shoulder, in the category of 90 to 100% of points earned, last year in green shows what we were in the 2022 APR. The blue shows what we are in 2023. So last year there were 41 districts that earned 90 to 100% of their points total. This year we have 26. In the 80 to 89.9 range, it increased in that range, also increased in the 70 to 79% range also. Of the districts that earned 90 to 100 points, so 26 districts earned 90 to 100% of their points. 13 of those 26 are K2, K5, or K8 districts inside there. So roughly about half are districts that don't experience the K-12 that we're providing for our community. When you put this just against the distribution across all districts, so there's a lot of little skinny lines there for all 552, 53 districts. We were just looking at that again today and noticed a district, I think Miami has 2 entries. So there's a K8 Miami and a K12 Miami. So I don't know if they're 2 separate ones, but each of these blue lines up here indicate a different district right there. The dark orange represent just where 90%. So to the right of that orange line represent 90% of the districts. In between 80 and 90 represent a portion of districts, and so on. Rockwood falls right there in between. We finish, when you look at all districts together, within the top 16% of all districts in terms of percent of points earned on the APR. When you break it out a little bit further and you look at the distribution here now, so again, each bar, you notice there's not as many bars, but each bar here represents a school district as well. And this time we're looking at districts that are K-12, so that are K-12 districts and that have the maximum points possible. So districts that are similar to Rockwood in that they are K-12, serving a community of K-12 students, and that they have 192 points possible in their APR scoring guide. When you take it one step further and look at distribution in terms of districts that have more than 17,000 students, there's about 6 districts in the state of Missouri that have more than 17,000 students. In this scenario, Rockwood earned 85% of the points, which is the most of those districts serving more than 17,000 students. So this is just to kind of give you an idea of the distribution and how things are displayed based on different characteristics. When we go a little bit further and give a score breakdown, this chart is going to share the changes from 2022 to 20,000, way too far in the future, to 2023, and beginning with achievement status. So again, achievement status are looking at percent of students who are below basic, proficient, and advanced. And in this area, 91.7% of the points earned. That is the same as last year. And that's just a reminder that we're looking at both students all for our district and the student group. When you look at achievement growth, 72% of the points earned in 2022, 50% of the points earned in 2023. The notable change from last year to this year is they included biology, government, English, and English 2 and Algebra 1 as part of that growth calculation, which hadn't been there in the prior year. Success Ready. This is the Success Ready for the performance side. So this is looking at college and career readiness measures such as ACT, ASVAB. Are we providing those assessments and are students getting qualifying scores on those? As well as advanced credit opportunities such as students have an opportunity to take AP, dual credit, dual enrollment courses, and again, earning satisfactory marks to count as credit towards that. We earned 100% of our points again this year. Graduation rate, you get the opportunity to use your highest of 4-year graduation rate, 5-year graduation rate, 6 years, or 7-year graduation rate, and we earned 100% of our points there as well. And graduate follow-up. And we're about ready to start this now. So anybody listening out there that has a 2023 graduate, please fill out the survey that's coming your way. We follow up with our graduates 6 months after graduation to find out what they're currently doing, and we report that back to the state. And the data here, it includes the 2022 graduates since we haven't yet followed up with the 2023. Moving to the continuous improvement side of things and beginning with the continuous improvement plan area, we earned 100% of the points total. Also again this year, Response to standards, that's the pilot that we did last year that we will get our scores credited to 2024. We also perform a climate and culture survey through our SEL data, through what we do with the community and our staff. And again, 100% of our points we have earned. Required documentation, this in turn references timely submission, different things, housekeeping things, in essence, that we do on a regular routine basis. And then there's a success rate continuing improvement side. This includes things such as the kindergarten early assessment, our ICAP, which is ensuring students have a 4-year plan. So our students in 8th grade do a 4-year plan of what they intend to do in high school. They can change that throughout high school, but as a way to begin thinking and preparing what's available and possible there in high school. And again, we earned a little bit more than we earned last year because attendance is also in that area, and we earned an additional attendance point. So we earned 3 out of the 4 possible attendance points. So we earned 91.7% of those points. This brings us for a total of 85% of the total possible points. With an inclusion of biology, government, English, and Algebra 1, that's the big change from 2022 to 2023 in terms of the overall scoring.
So just to clarify, on the achievement growth, that is not measuring the same student from year to year, but rather increases in that there's the score, the general scores?
They're doing a little bit of both. And
Okay.
so they're
But you can't do that in government because the same students don't
Correct.
take it.
So they're using other scores as a predictive score. And
Oh.
so there's still some questions that we've been in contact with DESE. Really, many area districts and state districts have been in contact with DESE to learn a little bit more about the formula and the process, because this is new with that. The growth formula last year is still one that was still being understood, and it was the first year for it. And then this year, with the inclusion of the EOCs, the end of course assessments in there, added another layer that we're still all looking for a few more answers to help supply those. Correct. Yeah, they don't. Yes, it's not itemized out in there. It's grouped together. Well, I take it back. It's itemized out for each content area inside there. Yep. In terms of achievement, sometimes it's helpful to see like how is that exactly calculated in terms of achievement. So they create a MAP performance index, and they call that, and I'm going to shorten that to use MPI tonight. So MAP performance index. Essentially what it is a way of taking 4 things, so the below basic, basic, proficient, advanced, and rolling it into a single number. Based on that single number, it allows DESE to provide a score, and that's what's used in our overall APR. Traditionally, how this has been developed is it's used the percent of students scoring below basic and gave it a multiplier of 1, the percent of students scoring basic and given it a multiplier of 3, percent of students scoring proficient multiplying it by 4, and the percent of students scoring advanced and multiplying it by 5. The highest anybody could get is 500. That would be if 100% of your students scored advanced, that would be a score of 500. The lowest possible score is 100. If 100% of our students scored in the below basic range, 1 times 100 would be 100. So we have a range of 100 to 500. The great thing with MSIP 6 is that they gave a range between here now. So instead, if a student scored below basic, maybe let's say their 3rd grade year, when they took the 4th grade map, maybe they also scored below basic. However, they're closer to scoring basic there. What they did is they changed that multiplier to kind of acknowledge the path between where they're at in their particular achievement level. So this has been a good development in that you see changes over time with the student that they might be scoring below basic for multiple years, but they do see an increase as they're moving up, as they're making progress and growth. So this is just a brief example of how that's calculated, how that translates to our data and what we have shared. In terms of MPI and how DESE calculates and looks at MPI and gives us a score, they take each of our content areas and they create an MPI, as we just gave an example for, and then they put it against this matrix here. For Rockwood, all of our content areas scored in the target range, which is the highest range possible, that 400 to 500 range. That's where we all scored for all students. When we look at the other groups, so remember there's 2 groups that we look at, all students and our student group. So again, as a reminder, student group includes students who are Black, Hispanic, in the free reduced lunch program, participate in our ESOL program, or have an IEP. Students there scored, we're consistent there as well. We're on track. So all of our scores through our MPI, each content area, are within on track. When we take that one step further and kind of look at this individually and kind of look at a comparison of 22 to 23, we see here from 22 to 23 for ELA, again looking at all students, there was a slight decrease of 0.2. When we look at math, we had 0 change in there in terms of overall MPI. When we look at science and social studies, we saw both a gain, a 3.5 gain in science and a 0.7 gain in social studies. When we look at the same achievement status for our students in our student group, we see gains in all 4 areas. So we're able to see improvement in terms of our MAP performance index increased from 2022 to 2023 in all of our areas there. Summary for our achievement status summary. In 7 of the 8 possible areas, we increased our MPI or it stayed the same, which totaled for 91.7% of those achievement points. So 44 out of 48 points were earned there. The other part, the other 24% of the overall score is with growth. And as we kind of talked about already, the growth would have traditionally been used as part of the growth model is looking at 4th grade. If you're looking at 4th grade results, you would use the 3rd grade math or ELA to look at that a little bit. 5th grade, you would look at 4th grade and so on. This year, the new measures used in the 2023 APR growth calculations utilize prior year scores, math and ELA. Again, some of these, the clarity is not yet there. We're still looking at, as this is just kind of came out this week. Was it this week? Last week? Monday last week. Is still looking for a few more points of clarification that we have notes out to get more information on that as well in terms of the overall growth calculation and exactly which assessment were used with each of those in there. The other aspect to point out with EOCs, they're end of course assessments and they're not tied to a particular grade level. So that's the other question that we've shared with this, is that with the grade level assessments above, it makes sense because there's a natural progression of one grade to the next. Here you could have multiple years in between when students take the data they're using and the EOC. That might be very different depending on when districts have those end of course assessments in their curricular areas or their progression with their courses. The other areas that are on our APR are within the performance area, include that success ready. So that's the CCR, so college and career readiness assessments, which our students are taking and scoring well on our ACT, ASVAB. And when I say scoring well, there's also another matrix or rubric that DESE uses to determine what percent in order to get their points as well in there. Also, there still continues to be ways that we can improve inside there as well that we continue to look at when we look at our ACT results and such. Advanced credit are a percent of students that are participating in advanced credit classes and earning a B or better in those. So AP and dual credit and dual enrollment. We've mentioned graduation rate and graduate follow-up, and both of those we earned full points in there as well. So 100% of our points earned in these additional performance categories. When you go to the next area, which is our continuous improvement, if you remember, that counts as overall 30% of the overall score. You can see all the areas that we've touched on before in terms of we have an improvement plan. That LEA is local education agencies. That's the response to standards. That will come out next year in 2024. That's the pilot year we did last year. Climate and culture survey, success ready students means that we have a process in place for looking at an early kindergarten assessment, that we have an ICAP that we're doing that 4-year plan for high school, planning for high school in 8th grade, and attendance. We have what percent of our students are in attendance 90% of the time or more. We're looking and shooting for 90% of our students in attendance for 90% of the time or more. So you can see there, that's a slight increase from last year. Last year we earned 2 of the 4 points. This year we had 3 of the 4 points earned. There's an area for expansion. If you add any expansion programs, this is more or less a bonus point category in here. But because we earned all of our points on the slide before on the other continuous improvement success ready, these points don't apply, but just acknowledgement of CT expansion. And then the required documentation that is listed there in terms of audits, secretary of the board reports, and timely submission of core data included in there. In terms of plans in place going on the rest of the year, as we mentioned earlier, we continue to look at our interim assessment data, and we have plans to continue to review it again this year still. We're continuing to hold ongoing improvement meetings to monitor progress and how we're doing. We met with our schools in the fall, set some goals. With the release of STAR data here, when we come back from break, we'll have a great new set of data to look at to see how we're making progress. We use those a lot of times as indicators towards those goals. We're monitoring target supports in there, so we have a number of, whether it's pull-out intervention programs that we have going on, we'll be able to use our interim assessment data to monitor that. We have a Rockwood annual community report that we provide in February as well. Continue development with assessment practices. So as our implementation teams are ongoing, we continue to develop our assessment practices. And then with our Success Ready cohort, there is a group of districts that are looking at what are ways that we can continue to evolve the practice with accountability and being more responsive. As we've kind of shared, our MAP data comes out really after the school year has started. How can we align a system that lets us use that data we get on a more frequent basis with an accountability system that is more up to date in terms of frequency of when we get results, so we can be even more responsive. So there's a great community of districts that are partnering to do that, and we are also in part of listening and engaging. Right now it's a lot of meetings and discussing and some new learning, but look forward to continuing to learn more about that partnership and that cohort inside of there. With that, really just leave it with this brief summary slide of our achievement summary, and open it up for any questions there might be out there.
Go first. I agree with Dr. Kane. We are definitely higher than 85. So, kudos to your department. Couple questions on slide 15 with the lines. If you go back to that. And I don't know if you'll have the answer to this, so sorry if I'm putting you on the spot. But if I counted correctly without my cheaters,
Is it this one?
The next one. The one, yeah. Of the 8 districts that are scoring higher than us, that are K-12 districts, how many of those districts had more than one high school?
I would need to
dig a little bit more
in there. I think the blue line might be, the darker blue line Rockwood might be covering up 2. I think we're 10 out of those right there, about there. I'd have to go back and double check how many had more than one high school.
Okay. Just was curious, because I think
I'll note
says
that.
a lot. And then also on slide 21, you saw Lynn and I shaking our head about the sub-student groups. To see that amount of growth in that category is huge, so kudos to your department. I know that that has been a huge focus and effort to move a lot of those subgroups, so thank you on that. And then finally, just so I understand, and I have this clear when people ask me questions, for biology and government, they're using English and algebra scores to determine growth, correct?
For understanding.
Okay, just want to make sure that I'm clear with that.
They provided you a rationale why they're doing it. I mean,
So
do they feel like if someone in English is going to do? I mean,
And they haven't. The webinar we were on wasn't clear which ones they're using. Are they using a combination of 2? Are they just using one? For example, are they using the math and the English for the biology? Are they using it also for government? Or are they just using maybe the English for government? I think what my wondering is if they've found a correlation and using that correlation as part of that. So they might have found that. But again, I think one of the things that districts struggle as they're trying to unpack this a lot is those aren't required grade specific courses, meaning the time in between could differ. Like there's more variables between those EOCs and the data they're using than what there are with the normal grade level assessments. And I think that's the part that leaves us, a lot of us wondering and looking for a little bit more clarity on that.
The wondering's problematic. The stakes are too high when you're talking about public distribution of results like this. And just to be frank, I think our community and our students and parents and staff deserve to know what it happens to be so that we aren't spinning our wheels. If there's a publicly stated goal, we're going to knock ourselves out to try to reach it. We just need to know what that happens to be. That's all that we're asking for.
To it. Thank you, Glenn. And I know you have a team of people that help you take this level of a data dive into all of this, and your patience and knowledge to help us all understand something that, you know, we didn't have to, like Dr. Kane said, we didn't have to have this conversation tonight, but it's important to get the facts out there and to know as much about it as we possibly can with the information we've got. So thank you very much to all of you. Any other board questions or comments? All right. Thank you both.
Thank you both. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have another information item, the budget update FY25. Cindy Bias and Dan Steinbergy are coming up to share this presentation with us. Welcome. Hi.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to share our budget formulation to date with you. Just want to start by a reminder of the funds that we are budgeting for. The first column on this slide shows our governmental fund groups under generally accepted accounting principles, and these are the funds that we budget and we report on. Those funds roll up into just 4 funds for our state reporting. And then when we were doing our Proposition 3 information, a lot of questions came up about our patrons' county tax bills and tax statements and how that related to our funds. So we've added a column to this slide this year that shows that the incidental and teachers funds are what make up the school purposes on people's tax statements. Capital projects stands alone, and debt service stands alone. This slide shows our budget cycle. It is a year-round process. It starts out with the superintendent communicating his budget priorities. We then start putting together our revenue projections, estimates, take in budget requests from the various departments and buildings. And we're here now in December presenting our preliminary budget projections to you. Throughout January, February, and the spring, we'll be making tweaks to the estimates we've already made based on updated information that comes in. We'll be having meetings with the departments and buildings to further develop the budget. In May, we'll present to you our proposed budget and our capital projects planning, including Proposition 3, and then in June you'll be asked to approve that budget. Financial highlights and key factors. I know Dr. Kane pointed out at the beginning of the meeting tonight about the awards that we've gotten that Dan and his staff have worked so hard for, but we never miss a chance to try and remind people of that because it is a heavy lift for them. Key financial factors that have been considered in the budget process are given next. And first, we want to point out that we come from a position of strength. We've got a strong fund balance reserve at the current time. Our local tax base continues to be steady. We know our ESSER funds, our relief funding from COVID is are expiring, but we've planned for this. We know that we had overwhelming approval for Proposition 3. So we're starting out the year, starting out the budget process under some very positive factors. However, we have some negative considerations hanging over our heads. Declining enrollment, and as you know, that impacts our state funding and our Proposition C sales tax revenue. Our employee health benefits are self-insured, and we know that the costs of insurance, costs of health care, costs of pharmacy are increasing, not just for our school district, and so we have to keep a close eye on that and make sure that that's adequately budgeted for to keep that fund healthy. Senate Bill 190, the senior citizen tax freeze, that was just recently passed. The impact of that on our revenues is just unknown. There is just no way to be able to estimate that at this time. And we don't even really know that it's going to be implemented in fiscal year 25. It would be our tax year 24. We don't have any information about that. There's also future legislation being proposed that could have an impact on our revenues. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and budgeted for fiscal year 25 with our normal estimates, our normal collection rates on taxes. But we know that if Senate Bill 190 is implemented, then that's going to cut back our collections because there will be all those senior citizens that have the tax credits. So what we are doing now is looking to the strength of our fund balance. You'll see that we do have a healthy fund balance, and we expect that that will be able to carry us through the time period where we need to assess the impact of Senate Bill 190 and any other legislation, step back, come up with our plans for how we are going to meet those challenges. So as I said, the budget process begins with the setting of our priorities, and those emanate from our strategic plan, the way forward, and Dr. Kane's theme for this year coming from the strategic plan, which is focus on our future. Now, as we consider budget requests and staffing requests, these are the things that we're thinking about. So Dr. Kane's theme and priorities give rise to these 2024-25 budget priorities. The first is staff salaries and benefits. Staff salaries and benefits, as you'll see in a minute, makes up over 80% of our expenditure budget, and so that's always our first priority. Prioritization of our Proposition 3 funds is a big factor in our budget this year. The continued funding of the Dignity and Belonging Initiative. We know that the ESSER funds are going away, so evaluation of the programs that were paid for by ESSER funds, determining which, if any of those, need to go forward, and accommodating those programs elsewhere in our budget has been a priority. Every year there's a component of operational necessity in our budget estimates, just basic cost increases, inflation. Our utility costs are going to go up, our insurance costs are going to go up, costs of supplies and services that we need to buy are going to go up, so that's always considered in our budget. And then making allowances for unfavorable economic uncertainties. So we want to be able to present you with a balanced budget that's not going to use up any of that fund balance, and keep it available for meeting the challenges that we know are ahead. So we've made our preliminary estimates of our expected revenues for 24-25, and we find that except for the unknown potential impact of Senate Bill 190, our funding streams are expected to be consistent with what they've been in the past, which is about 79% of our revenue coming from local sources, 17% coming from state sources, and the remaining 4% from other sources. So I want to present some information here about the drivers of that revenue, things that are used in those calculations, and help you understand our estimates a little bit better. As you know, assessed valuation is going to drive our tax revenues. So our assessed valuation has increased from about 4.1 billion back in 1920 to almost 5.5 million projected for 2024-25. But the graph just below that shows how school revenues are impacted by the Hancock Amendment. So you can see here, every other year is a reassessment year. Every other year has a higher column because that's the percentage increase in assessed valuation for each of those years. The red line shows the consumer price index, or 5%, whichever is lower, which is what our revenues are held to under the Hancock Amendment. So you can see that even in years of a great increase in assessed valuation, like 2023-24, our revenues are still held to 5% because the consumer price index was above 5%. And that results in a tax rate rollback. That's how our revenues are held down. So you probably recognize this table from our Proposition 3 presentations. We've now added what we project for 2024, which funds the 2025 fiscal year, and our tax rate will stay the same as was promised in our discussions related to Proposition 3. That's what we're budgeting. So you remember the tax rate for 2023 was the lowest it had been in about 30 years, a little more than 30 years. And we expect that to stay exactly the same for 2024. This slide actually still has some preliminary information and does not reflect our September 2023 enrollment that was used in our budget projections. So I've actually inserted another slide that's updated beyond what was previously available in the BoardDocs, and you guys have a copy of that in front of you. And so this will be added to BoardDocs after the meeting tonight. So our enrollment is decreasing. We've talked about that for the last several years, I believe. Incoming kindergarten classes are not as big as our graduating senior classes, although we're still seeing some growth in the district that's offsetting that. There's also the biggest driver in our enrollment decrease right now is the planned phase out of the VIC program. So this has been planned as the students move up, move away, whatever, they are not being replaced with new students. So you can see that our VIC enrollment, which was 1,341 back in 2020, is projected to be only 757 in 2025. So enrollment, of course, drives our average daily attendance. As enrollment drops, ADA is going to drop. And we've seen two pressures on our ADA in the last couple of years. The first is the decrease in enrollment, and the second is, since COVID, a decrease in our attendance rates. It looks a little bit better in our current year, and as Glenn said just a little bit ago, it is improving. But you can see from the gold line here on this graph that through 2023, our attendance hasn't returned to the pre-pandemic levels. The blue line shows that due to the pandemic clause that was applied to state formula by DESE, our state funding has been based on our pre-pandemic ADA. And this year, the pandemic clause will not apply this year that we're budgeting for. And so we'll realize the decrease in enrollment and therefore the decrease in ADA. On the other hand, another major factor in calculating state revenue is the state adequacy target. That's the amount that is applied to our ADA in the calculation. So state adequacy target has been 6,375 for the last 6 years. It was recalculated by DESE this year, and so for fiscal year 24-25, it's going to increase to 6,760. And Dan's going to show you how this offsets our decrease in ADA to a great degree here in just a minute. So with those explanations of some of the factors that are driving our most significant revenues, I'm going to turn it over to Dan, and he's going to get into some of our actual estimates for you.
Spend just a couple of minutes just kind of talking, as Cindy mentioned, just kind of putting numbers to the talking points and factors that we've included in the budget. So we always start with revenue and show a comparison of where we started the school year with our adopted budget that was adopted in June. As part of the cycle, we've updated our factors and kind of show updated numbers where we are now of about $6 million increase over the adopted budget. As you can kind of see at the top line there, local revenue is our largest source of revenue, and as we recall back from September, and as Cindy kind of mentioned, assessed valuation significantly increased, which drove a large portion of that increase in revenue. So while that is the largest increase we've seen from an adopted budget perspective, a lot of that, again, as I mentioned, was related just to the increase in the assessed valuation that we were able to realize here. But if you kind of go over one column there and compare it to FY25, so 24-25 is a non-reassessment year. So again, just with local revenue driving a large part of our revenue, we typically see a small percentage increase, a small revenue increase in total in that year. So as you can see, we are, with our factors, $2 million increase, a little bit less than 1% increase, and over the next couple of months we'll refine those numbers and based on updated information as we kind of go through there. So the 23-24 information, so the adopted budget versus the current projection, the factors we have shared with the board in our financial report. We'll continue to update our financial report on a monthly basis, send those out to you through email, and it'll recap changes from month to month. So we'll do that through May, with the final report coming in May when we do our budget update. So again, just a quick recap on 23-24. A large portion of our revenue increase was in local taxes. We are seeing some other improvements. One, with the current interest rate environment and our cash balances, we've been able to take advantage of some increased interest rates. So we have some investment income that has increased over our budget, and also just some of the other local taxes, Prop C sales tax, and our merchants and manufacturing surtax, which is based on commercial assessment. So it's all ties into our assessed valuation. So overall, federal revenue, we are seeing a decrease, but a lot of that's just timing of when we receive our reimbursements through the federal grants. So all of our federal grants are reimbursable basis. So we pay for the expenses and then we receive reimbursements at a later time. So that variance is really just due to timing. So in regards to 24-25, again, assessed taxes, local taxes, is 84% of our operating budget. So a large portion of that is tied to our assessed valuation. So as I kind of mentioned, 24-25 is a non-reassessment year. So typically you do not see increases in assessed valuation other than new construction or increases in personal property. So with that being said, we look at prior year trends of what we've actually incurred. That 1.06% of increase in assessed valuation is consistent with prior years. The only outlier is 2 years ago, we did have a significant increase in a non-reassessment year to personal property, and that's when just across the board through the county, everybody saw increases in their personal property piece of it. But the 3 prior years to that are consistent with that 1% increase. Our tax rate is expected to remain the same, and that's information we've communicated through the Proposition 3 communications. And then again, that shows with a $1.8 million increase, so that a little bit over 1% increase drives about 1.8 million of revenue there. So you can kind of see just how significant that is with those changes in the assessed valuation. Our basic formula, so this is the money from our state formula, is based on a couple factors, one being the highest weighted average daily attendance of the current year or the prior 2 years. For 24-25, we are going to go back to the regular formula of looking back at that the highest of the current year, 2 prior years. As Cindy kind of mentioned, we have been kind of living with the extension of the COVID statute that was extended for 2 additional years, which financially benefited Rockwood the last couple of years because we are in a declining enrollment. We do have a state adequacy target of 6760, and a couple other factors that DESE sets from year to year. You can see one is the dollar value modifier, which is basically just a calculation on how they fund the formula has decreased and is expected to be 100% appropriated. So this chart here is something similar that we presented in the last couple of budget updates. You can kind of see, at the top section there, the regular term ADA, you can kind of see the impact that our attendance declining enrollment is having on our ADA numbers there. If you go down a couple lines, you can see where the 18,594, that's what we've been funded on the last couple of years. So you can see that's been relatively flat the last couple of years, and that's because we're benefiting from the state extension of that pandemic clause where we're using the 1920 ADA. So back in May, we knew and we were expecting that that clause to kind of sunset. So we were expecting a decline in our revenue just because we were seeing a drop in enrollment. 24, 25, the conversation was looking at a $6 million decrease in funding. So with that being said, what has changed since May is over the summer, DESE looked at the funding of the formula. They've reset the calculation of how they set their state adequacy targets. So they've increased in September the numbers that they have provided is they're going to increase that from 6375, and that's been flat for a number of years, and that's something we've also had a discussion over the summer with the Blue Ribbon Commission that we talked about as well. But the increase for 24-25 is expected to be 6760. So just providing a comparison of what that does to revenue. Again, May we were expecting a $6 million decrease in revenue to 24-25, but that increase in the SAT has allowed us to recapture that. The calculation on comparing apples to apples is a $6.8 million increase. It doesn't mean we're getting $6.8 million more than we're getting this year. It just shows the impact that it's having when we are expecting the declining enrollment to impact the formula and the calculation we're going through. So just going back to this chart here, overall, basic formula, we are expecting $1 million decrease in revenue, but that increase in the SAT has really softened the impact financially of what we would expect, and actually what we were expecting back in May. Other revenue sources continue to be strong. The Proposition C sales tax, so this is based on the collections from the state and distributed based on a per WADA. So that is impacted by the declining enrollment. So every year, that we're seeing declining enrollment, our ADA will impact that. But that's also being offset just by the local tax collections and improvement in economy. So we have a slight increase in that revenue there. Transportation, just want to kind of highlight that for the 3rd year in a row, we expect transportation to be fully funded at the state level. You can see in 22-23 was the first year that we had that increase carried through to this year, and we're expecting that to continue for next year. Transitioning to operating expenditures, this is a chart that we show as a comparison of our per student expenditure to our enrollment. As you can see, Rockwood is there towards the bottom there, bottom portion of that graph there. Just indicates that the value that Rockwood citizens are receiving for the education here through Rockwood. This is based on 21-22. Not all school districts have finalized their information for June 30, just like tonight. Our audit report was finalized tonight and approved, so we'll submit all that information. But with us having our numbers, we do know that our 22-23 per student expenditure is $12,142, so that's a 4.4% increase. So it is below the inflation trend that we've been experiencing. So we're still receiving a great value here. This is a similar comparison to revenue just for expenditures. You can see that with the updated factors for 23-24, we are anticipating a $7 million increase in expenditures. If we take that one step farther as part of our 24-25, we have an $8.3 million increase. You can see the percentage increases there, 2.68% and 3.09% respectively there. And we'll kind of go into a little more detail related to that. But in regards to 23-24, again, Cindy kind of mentioned that personnel is our biggest investment, largest portion of our budget. We do have an increase in salary and benefits, and a majority of that is related to just the before mentioned insurance costs that we're seeing, as well as just some other increases in overtime and substitute costs that we're incurring, as well as just other business factors that are happening. Our business insurance has experienced the first rate increase in 15 plus years this year, in utilities. And capital, again, is similar to like the federal revenue, where it's a timing. A lot of our projects happen over the summer, so when the work is not completed by June 30, it rolls over to the next year. So year over year, it doesn't impact fund balance, but it's just because we had a couple of large projects this past summer that didn't get completed before June 30, it carried into this year. So it fell out of last year and moved into this year. So for 24-25 expenditures at this time, with the based on the requests that departments have submitted and review by superintendent's cabinet, we are anticipating no increases to the full-time equivalent staffing of our positions. We do have certain employee groups that we are experiencing staff openings, and rather than budgeting that they're all going to be filled for 24-25, which based on this information we don't see as realistic, we are applying a 25% fill rate to those. So we do have at least 25% of those positions budgeted for next year, and then of course we will need to factor any adjustments if we would incur or increase in those fill rates beyond that. But at this point, that's a factor that we're putting in place for the budget. Continue on with board paid insurance. So as a reminder, the board provides 100% insurance for eligible employees and 50% on their dependent coverage. Again, as we kind of mentioned, our self-insurance plan is being impacted just by the rising medical and pharmacy costs that everybody across the country is realizing it's just hitting us a little bit harder this year. But overall, the benefit package that we offer to employees is very favorable compared to other school districts and competitive. So we kind of mentioned 83% of our operating budget is in salaries and benefits. So we will continue to see that percentage hover around that percentage over the next couple of years as we continue to invest in our employees. And then this is just a recap of where we expect our fund balance to be. As you can see in the first column there, when we adopted our budget in June, we expected a $6.8 million increase. That has slightly changed to $5.8 million, so about $1 million variance after we've accounted for all of our factors through November. That number may continue to change over the next couple of months, and that's where we mentioned we'll continue to provide monthly reports for those changes as things kind of as we move through the school year and updated information is coming. And then taking a look at 24-25, so based on the current factors that we have, it does show a small decrease in fund balance of about $500,000. Again, that's based on the factors that we have now on a budget the size of our school district. Essentially, even show it's a negative, that's essentially we view it as a balanced budget, even though the numbers aren't there. But we expect changes to happen over the next couple of months in showing our fund balance percentages of 33% and looking at 32% heading into next year. So just a couple slides on Proposition 3. So in November, as we know, we received support for that the factors will not happen until September of 24 when we set the September tax rates. So we'll start receiving the revenue in December. So what we have done since November 7th is we've started looking at solutions for a public portal that will provide kind of a recap of all the work to the public that will be posted on our website. We're revisiting the project listings that Chris Friend and his department has worked with the buildings, just again going through the priorities on safety, technology, and facility needs. When we come back in May, we'll have a full capital planning presentation, which will include a little the identification of what we expect that first year Prop 3 funds to be used for. And of course, it'll be part of the adopted budget in June. And then we're working to reinstate the Way Forward Advisory Committee that was with us to help us along the Proposition 3 process. So the funding from year to year is always going to change based on the assessed valuations. So based on the budget information we have, we are estimating 24-25 that 36 cents. So again, 24-25 is year one of the phase-in, 36 cents, and it's about 18.8 million, which is in line with the conversations we had throughout the Proposition 3 presentations. And we expect the revenue coming in is going to be expenditures going out to fully fund all of those safety, technology, and facility needs that we have. So year over year, we expect fully to spend those funds coming in. And again, just to recap on our financial outlook, that this is the first step in the 24-25 budget process. We'll come back in May with a capital planning update and a proposed budget with a full adoption in June. A couple items we always keep in mind is just our operating fund balance. The 22% is what is our policy. 18% operating reserve plus 4% financial stabilization. As that chart showed, we are above that now. So conversations are a little different than we've had in the past, but we always want to make sure that our cash flow is sufficient, and of course just maintain a AAA rating, as we've mentioned before, which is really important to the district. And we'll continue to monitor those local tax collections and state legislation items that we've mentioned before. So, and of course, always the budget always closely aligns to our goals of the way forward. So, we'd be happy to take any kind of questions or maybe.
I do have one question. Oh, I have a couple. Just to be clear on Senate Bill 190, we'll still have their assessed value. It just we won't get the increase on seniors. Is that right?
Assessed valuation, their properties will continue to be assessed as they've been assessed.
We'll have income from that. We just won't have any increase on it.
Correct. Their tax bill will be frozen at
Correct.
what it is when they qualify.
But for everyone else, we'll still have increase.
Yes,
Okay, so that doesn't change. We'll still have an increase. It just won't be. Do we know those demographics of our district?
And if we did have a good handle on the demographics, I mean, you can get county demographics, but you can't relate that to the homes that they own. So we don't know how many people or what homes qualify for this, and there's going to be an application process for it. We just can't project it yet. Just don't have the data.
When the state is going to, or not state, the county is going to provide that information, do you have an estimate on when they are going to get it to you guys?
They have begun to talk about an application process, and so I would expect that they will have something in place in the 2024 tax year. Don't know what that's going to look like.
Any other board questions? I've got two comments. One is regarding slide 3, which is the budget cycle, and I just want to highlight that because I think it's so valuable to remind ourselves how much information is provided to us that is so valuable in understanding everything you just walked us through. And there's so many small components that go into a budget of this size. The monthly projection reports you provide to us, the student enrollment reports, hearing this from you tonight, walking us through this now. And we're not even, when you look at all the other opportunities ahead of the actual May sit down, we do not sit down in here in May and hear all this information for the first time. And there's a reason why our school district is in such wonderful financial standing, both from a number standpoint, but from a recognition standpoint. And I just want to reiterate that because the transparency and the facts that you provide to us are very beneficial. And my second comment ties into this presentation and the one before, which is, tonight we've spent a lot of time hearing a lot of numbers and a lot of data. And it's really important for us to remember that our job here is governance, but behind all these numbers our classrooms where these students sit, and the teachers that are working very hard, and the staff and the bus drivers to, hear that Rockwood's at 85% could be very disheartening. But to know the work that goes into this on a daily basis and the love and care that goes into this, we have the opportunity as a board to sit here and hear these presentations and these numbers. But like Tammy mentioned this evening, like her visit in the first grade classroom and the times we've had recently to hear from our bus drivers who really value their jobs. I just want to take a minute because it's really important for us to stand back and realize that, Rockwood is better than 85. And so I just wanted to show that appreciation to you all because it really, really does help all of us do our jobs up here when we get to hear this level of information. So we appreciate that.
Not to mention, piggybacking on Jamie's comment, your constant information that you load, in our website to, make it available for everybody, and your willingness to hear the, the community and always meeting with people when they need to. I do thank you for that. I think you all do a great job and work tirelessly. Thank you.
All right, good work. Thank you. Next item is the proposed agenda for the, wait for it, January 18th, 2024 board meeting that will take place at Rockwood Summit High School. It's going to. Okay. Then we've got future agenda presentations and events to attend. I certainly hope you all have time with loved ones on your calendars, and that is going to be almost just about it for at least the next, 10 days? What's the final count? I don't even know. Whatever it is, enjoy it. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting.